Even one down the sideline, and he's got Kazmeir over the top. Big throw down the sideline. Touchdown. His signature move and his signature performance. Allen, big ball one more time. 58 yards this time.
You're listening to the Bruin Bible. This is your host, Will Decker, bringing you UCLA football content all throughout the year for LA Football Network.
What is good, Bruin Bible listeners? It is your host, Will Decker. We got to get a sponsor in before we start this episode. It's BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines and the latest matchup reports for this year's NBA playoffs. BetOnline is your sports intel headquarters this season, as we have you covered for your insider sports wagering needs. From basketball, Major League Baseball, NHL, hockey, golf, to UFC and boxing, the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your home. Make sure you check out BetOnline. Get into the action today. So head to the website or use your mobile device to join, and be sure to use your promo code BELIEVE to receive your 50% bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now to the Bruin Bible. What is up, and welcome back to the Bruin Bible. It's been a long time since I've seen my brother, the myth, the man, Mr. Madman himself, back in the studio. And I want to tell you guys, every time I know that Madman is too busy to text me back, he is doing something extraordinary. And that is exactly what happened. We have to start this episode off by shouting out my brother. This man has just sold his company. And by the way, for our UCLA Bruin fans out there, Jamal's pops, who I know as Papa Madney, gave the commencement speech for the UCLA Engineering School. He was gone for those two things. He was in Cabo for a wedding. I feel like I've got James Bond live on the air right now with how, international man of mystery, Mr. Jamal Madney. First and foremost, big congratulations, my brother. We, as the UCLA community, just want to tip our caps to you, bro. You are a hardworking dude. Couldn't happen to a better guy. And I'm going to give you the floor on this one, man. So congratulations, Madman back on the mic. What more can you ask for?
Well, brother, thank you so much for those kind words. And it's great to be back home. And home doesn't just mean Los Angeles. Home doesn't just mean like in my sort of condo right now. It means being on the Bruin Bible with you. That is home, for me. And so really, really appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a gnarly last 10 days. Yes, that's why I've been a little bit, silent with our text thread. Otherwise, you and me are always riffing back and forth there. It's been quite an eventful last 10 days. Really grateful, my entrepreneurial journey with this company, Engage, that I started with a classmate at Stanford and business school. 3-year journey to sort of see that come to fruition has been really incredible. And then got a chance to really celebrate my wife's childhood best friend in Cabo and in Mexico, and kind of just be in the presence of that type of a friendship and love and what have you. And then kind of raced back on Sunday to see my dad, give the commencement speech for the School of Engineering at Poly Pavilion. And so it was very surreal to see him on the Jumbotron of Poly. And, I took a picture, Will. It was sort of a poetic one where while he was talking, obviously kind of wanted to lock in and listen to him. But obviously, you have to take the pictures. I sort of took the phone, took a picture of him on the Jumbotron, and there was only one championship banner that could fit in the frame next to the Jumbotron, and it was 1966's UCLA basketball national championship. And why that was significant was that was my dad's first year at UCLA. And so, the fact that was the only one that fit in the frame, that championship banner with him kind of giving a commencement speech after his career and just how much he bleeds UCLA and loves UCLA, I thought was really symbolic and special. So it's been an amazing last 10 days, and just very grateful to be alive and have a great community of folks that really love and support me, with you being right there at the top of that list. So thank you so much, brother, and happy to be back and talk our beloved Bruins.
Talk our beloved Bruins, we will, but we got to get Papa Madney on the show.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, it is
Absolutely.
time,
He
man.
he would love nothing more, and he loves you to death, and we'll make that happen for sure.
It is time, man. We got to get. I mean, you are the man, myth, and legend, but Papa Madney is.
No. I am very much in second place there. So we'll do that. It'll be really fun.
I can't wait to talk some UCLA football with him. Today, we are going to be breaking down the secondary, and I've got some hot takes with this group. And I know you're going to be talking about a lot of different players that we think are going to stand out, players that are going to need to take a step up if we want to see them have the success that we ultimately believe is possible for the secondary. But first, before we get into that, Madman, another commitment made to UCLA. We were able to secure 6'7", 280-pound offensive lineman, our fourth O-lineman of 7 commitments for UCLA right now, with our guy, Mr. Jensen Somerville out of Utah, our second commitment out of Utah. Tim Drevno, I mean, this was the point that we made going to spring practice, but we were really worried about the depth of the offensive line. And I know Drevno is a phenomenal offensive line coach. I'm very excited for what he's potentially building in that room. But to just get another big-bodied guy that came into a UCLA camp, earned the offer, less than a month ago at the UCLA big man camp, his recruiting profile was starting to blow up, commits to UCLA. It really reminds me a lot of Luke Duncan, where Duncan last year, kind of an unknown 3-star quarterback, goes to a camp, kind of blows up, gets a UCLA offer, and then you see after his senior year, he progresses to a 4-star talent on a lot of these recruiting profiles. I'm getting the same kind of vibe from Somerville. Stanford offered, Cal offered. Utah was right there for him. And, Stanford, you got to be both talented and smart to go there. I mean, that's probably one of the hardest offers to even achieve at the Division I level. What does this say about UCLA getting 4 offensive linemen in their first 7 commitments for 2024?
Well, it's very exciting because I think the Bruins are starting to see where they need to lean in more. You and I have kind of talked about even this 2023 team and just how excited we are. And the one kind of piece of the puzzle for us to kind of really feel like this team is going to make that next step and truly contend for the conference title and beyond was offensive line. And I think if you look at the last 2 or 3 years with Chip's philosophy, with the transfer portal, with who his assistant coaches are, with just the overall culture of books and ball that he's creating, what we're finding is the skill guys want to come to UCLA in different forms, whether that is through the portal after 1 year, through the portal after 2 years, coming in as a grad transfer, or coming in straight from high school. That pipeline is starting to really establish itself where the name of UCLA can just sort of sell itself when it comes to the skill players because of what the university is, but also who Chip Kelly is. You put all of that together, people want to be there. I think that there needed to be more intentionality around a recruiting strategy up front from an offensive line standpoint. And I think, because that is so critical to the Chip Kelly zone read offense in terms of being able to have that upfront skill and experience and stability. But then B, the what makes offensive lines, the difference between championship offensive lines and mediocre, average to good offensive lines is continuity. And I think that when you can establish that pipeline early and guys come in together and guys grow together and have starts together, and you put a core of where you're not kind of changing out more than 1 or 2 offensive linemen from a starting perspective in every year, and you got kind of a core 3 guys that you can always sort of build around year after year. That's how you build that pipeline. And I think that's what the Bruins are seeing here. And I think the emphasis with Chip, with Timmy D, and it's really exciting. And in terms of Somerville, I mean, the fact of the matter is what really excited me, that he picked UCLA over Stanford, because Stanford 9 times out of 10, if they want a guy, they're going to get a guy just in terms of who they are as a university and what they're sort of going after. So the fact that, again, with the likes of a Kamari Ramsey and others, that these players are picking UCLA over Stanford is very exciting moving forward. And then B, to go into a place like Utah. I mean, look, the Utes, 2-time defending Pac-12 champions, built really on the offensive and defensive lines. They bullied the USC Trojans in that Pac-12 championship game last year, really through the crux of their offensive line. So to go into their backyard and pick up a guy who's really a rising star up the recruiting rankings just speaks to now that national brand and that national exposure that the Bruins are getting. So much to love about this, and the fact that 4 of the first 7, as you mentioned, Will, are on the offensive line. I think folks can see, as long as that is intentional and proactive from a recruiting standpoint, the other players, the depth is there year over year to continue to make big runs.
Yeah, and there's a difference between recruiting and recruiting in a smart manner.
Yes.
I think UCLA is doing it in a very smart way where they're addressing their problems immediately out of the gate for next year. We know how loaded this linebacker room is for this next upcoming season. After these guys leave, there's going to be maybe 2 or 3 guys left on the roster that are going to be able to fill those spots. What do? They go out and get 2, linebackers already in the first 7 commitments. And then with the offensive linemen, we noticed it, man. It was very thin up front. We got 2 transfers coming in, Jake Wiley and Kadir Kauna, who I think will be able to help stabilize the offensive line a little bit more. But outside of those guys, we just were not confident in the depth that we saw. And Drevno, I mean, he's a positional coach. He wants to bring his guys in to kind of do the job. And I mean, man, he is convincing these guys at such a high rate right now. 3-3-star, tackles when it down for a guy like Drevno. And then you look at what just happened the other day. The offensive tackle, Mark Schraller, was actually upgraded to a 4-star talent. Yes. And that shows you kind of what they're doing. They are investing in some of these recruits like stocks. Like, they see the early potential. This is a smart coaching staff. We've said it time and time again. They see these guys, they can see on film, they go, oh, this guy's going to translate. Like, I don't care if he hasn't gotten out yet, he hasn't hit the camp circuit, whatever it may be, that he's not ranked as highly as he should be. We're going to get these guys early. We're going to offer them and see what happens. Schraller is going to be a 4-star. I wouldn't be surprised if a few other of these offensive linemen, as well as these linebackers that we were able to talk about, like Blake Tabarachi, who I mentioned on the last episode, are 4-stars at the end of their cycles because they are not even fully finished products yet. And you can just see the flashes that make them, elite in their own area, for that. I mean, Utah is not a recruiting hub, but man, when these guys get to camps and stuff like that, you'll really kind of see them take off. So I'm very thrilled about that.
For sure, Thriller. And the last point just to make on that, all phenomenal points there, Will, is the opportunistic nature of UCLA's recruiting, given the timing of the draft. I mean, look at what we saw in the draft with Mafi going to the Patriots, with Gaines going to the Cardinals, and where they were picked, and just, sort of the overall presence from a scouting perspective on how good these guys were. I mean, so many guys were projecting Mafi to be a 10, 12-year, just solid vet in the NFL. Patriots would be a perfect fit. You said it, Will. We were there right after practice. And you said, Mafi to the Patriots just makes too much sense. You and I go after practice to go get a burger. While we're going there, Mafi gets drafted to the Patriots. John Gaines to the Cardinals. We said it. This is a guy that's going to potentially anchor an offensive line, both on the field as well as through leadership. And so off of it. And so when you see that, when you see the pipeline now offensive line-wise of guys going to the league, UCLA did a magnificent job of taking that success and just parlaying it to the recruiting trail immediately, cashing in on that momentum and setting up the depth for 24. So yet again, really just smart strategy being displayed by this football program.
And Madman, I've got to take for you before we move to the secondary. Is this, as a complete unit, a program unit, is this, the strongest pitch that UCLA has ever had? To come to UCLA at this moment in time. And what I mean by that is, oh, you want to play in a big conference, we're moving to the Big Ten. Oh, you want to play with a star quarterback, we got Dante Moore, waiting in the wings. Oh, you want to go to the NFL, we've produced more NFL players in the last few years than any other Pac-12 team. Oh, you want to be a cool brand, well, we've got the Jordan brand. Like, everything across the board has been elevated due to UCLA. Is this the strong? Because to me, it feels like this is the strongest pitch at least since they won the national championship back in the 50s. That's my personal stance on it, Madman.
Well, I think it's such a great question and such a terrific observation. I would say if it is not the best time, it is probably tied for the best time since maybe the mid 80s with Donahue. You know, when they had it rolling with Donahue in the 80s, that pitch was so strong, and the crosstown rivalry and kind of beating SC, winning bowl games year over year, 3 Rose Bowls in 4 years, having just moved from the Coliseum to the Rose Bowl, having their own identity. That was a really strong period. Since then, Will, I completely agree with you. Since the mid 80s, this is the strongest collection of strategy, resources, brand, talent, cohesiveness that this program has had. I mean, even if you sort of go back, Bob Toledo was a guy who won those 2 years with Cade McNown in 97 and 98 with the 20 straight wins, you know, the Cotton Bowl victory, the Rose Bowl appearance, but just couldn't keep it rolling. He wasn't a complete enough coach. Didn't really sort of emphasize the defensive side of the ball enough. He was kind of a one-trick wonder, and that sort of caught up to him. Durrell never really sort of got into the recruiting chops the way he needed to. Neuheisel was an incredible salesman and such a terrific recruit, and probably the most selfless coach UCLA's ever had, in the sense of he was the one who drafted Brett Hundley, but redshirted him for Hundley's development, even though it came at the expense of his own success. But, you know, he struggled taking that talent to the next level. Moore, I felt, always got too much credit for playing with Neuheisel's players and the fact that SC was on sanctions. And then, you know, you sort of move forward. This is the most, why do you think I'm so excited about this program? I've said it for a couple of years now. Chip is the ideal coach for this program. The assistant coaches are locked in. Our great friend, Jerry Neuheisel, hopefully the next successor to Chip. They've got it all set up here. There is a strategy for sustaining success that I have not seen UCLA football have in this way since I was 4 or 5 years old. And so that's why it's just such an exciting time to be a Bruin. It's a great day to be alive and be a Bruin, Thriller, but I couldn't agree with you more with that assessment.
Bruin Bible listeners, we've got a special sponsor for today's episode. It is AG1. AG1 has been something that I've really enjoyed using in my spare time. 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole-source food nutrients in one scoop that you can use into your water. You stir it up. I use it before my workouts, before I start my day, and it has totally given me the energy I need to do the little things in life, like going to work, getting extra, an extra boost, a second wind, if you will, for a workout. Before I play pickleball with my friends, just it puts you in a good spirit of mind, and you're doing the healthiest possible thing by putting AG1 in your body. Make sure to check us out and get a special deal with the Bruin Bible. It's www.drinkag1.com/Bruin Bible to get the special deal that we provide. Once again, www.drinkag1.com/Bruin Bible to get that special deal. Now, back to the Bruin Bible. Yes, sir. We've always been labeled a sleeping giant. Well, the alarm clock is set. We are about to wake up the college football world. And how we do that is by the secondary making the jump to what we believe they are. And we're going to kind of segment it like we did with the linebackers, where we kind of have different groups. And I'll let you go to town on your opinions on these guys and what you think. But this secondary, man, it has been the Achilles heel of UCLA football. And I want to be careful because I know these guys are kids. I know they're trying their hardest. This is not me grading a professional player. So I want to be respectful in this, because grading, but it has not been pretty out there. 3 of the last 5 years, Madman, they've ranked 100th or worse in yards per game allowed in passing. And to make matters worse on that point, when you break down groups and how they've recruited for each area, whether it's the defensive line, the linebacking group, even on the offensive, the most talented group that we've recruited actually under the Chip Kelly era has been the defensive back group. So there's no reason why it should be as bad as it is right now. It has been problematic to say the least. And this is what I'm going to say, Madman. This was my hot take coming in. I actually believe that the secondary, not the offensive line, the secondary is going to be what defines this team moving forward, given the prowess of the quarterbacks that are in the Pac-12 this year. Because the offensive line, I mean, we had question marks up the wazoo last year. Week 1 against Bowling Green, there's like 4 false starts. Like the line was just not cohesive. But man, Drevno whipped that into shape by week 4. I was very pleased with what I saw. Yes, the O-line group was thin, in spring. But getting a Kadir Counter, getting a Jake Wiley, I think they can cobble together some success given what I saw from Drevno riding the ship last year. What I have never seen at UCLA, Madman, is the secondary be whipped into shape. We've just never seen it. Every big game we've lost, whether it was the Oregon game last year, whether it was University of Arizona, coming in the Rose Bowl, shocking us, Pittsburgh last year. Nick Patty driving them down the field at the end of the game. It was comical at that point. This is the group that will define the success of the season moving forward. Do you agree with that point, Madman? And what is your synopsis on the secondary before we dive into some individual players?
No, Thriller, I think I really agree with that. And there's two, right? You and I have talked about kind of these two position groups where, okay, this is where the gaps are. And we've talked about offensive line and secondary, where if you look at all of the other position groups, this is championship quality across the board. But I think you said it best. There's 2 reasons why there's such great sense of optimism with the offensive line. One is the overall development journey that the offensive line has taken over the course of a season, and we saw that just last year. I won't repeat what you were saying, but it's spot on. Where this team was against Bowling Green at the beginning, where this team was at the end against the likes of SC and Pitt, those were 2 different offensive lines. And the reason for that is, again, position coaching, player development, but also, even if those things fall short this year, which they won't, I want to be very clear about that, you have a guy in Chip Kelly that can sort of design plays around offensive line deficiencies as well. Getting the ball out quick, doing misdirection, using different tools in his toolbox, a gadget guy like Keegan Jones this year to kind of get the defense off balance. So there are ways, there is a path to success with the offensive line through traditional development, but also through play calling creativity. When you talk about the secondary, you don't have that luxury of being able to have the ball and control the play. You are reacting to the play. So you're starting off in a place of deficiency, number 1. But number 2, Will, and most importantly, why I couldn't agree with you more, this is the deepest the Pac-12 has ever been at quarterback, and it's not even close. This might be not just the best quarterbacked year in the Pac-12 conference. This might be the greatest quarterbacked year in any conference in the history of college football. So if you do not have a strategy and tactics and discipline on the secondary, look who is in this conference that UCLA is going to have to play. The reigning Heisman Trophy winner, the guy who they are saying is the de facto number 1 pick, the greatest prospect in the NFL since Andrew Luck and Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, Cam Rising, Jaden DeLora, Cam Ward, and on we go.
Shedeur Sanders.
Shedeur Sanders, DJU. You talk about even Arizona State, the kid from Notre Dame is there. It's just ridiculous. If outside of Stanford and Cal, any quarterback can sort of walk in and you feel confident that quarterback can lead a team to a victory against just about any other team in the conference. It's ridiculous. There is not a single week off on this schedule given the play at the quarterback position once you get into conference. So that is why, even beyond what we've seen from the offensive line and the challenges we've seen in performance with the secondary over the last 4 or 5 years, this is the year that it's going to be truly unforgiving. And so that is why I completely agree with you. This is both the Achilles heel of the team right now. This is also the area where the barometer of this season is going to be defined. How well this secondary can hold up and make life at least a little difficult for these quarterbacks is going to be the difference between 7-5 and 10-2. And it really is going to sit on this secondary. So couldn't agree more, Will.
Yeah, so I've got it being the most important position group for UCLA heading into the 2023 season. I'm going to take you through 3 sections of guys. So the guys I feel confident about, I don't know if you watched Ted Lasso, but when Ted Lasso walks in the locker room, he goes, I smell potential in here. So I smell potential with these guys. And then the wild cards that I saw a little bit in spring ball where, we weren't able to see a lot of them traditionally. And you go, oh, he made a nice little play on the football there. Maybe there can be something there if an injury happens or if they need him to step up. I'll start with the guys I feel confident about. It's a group of 3 players, and it's Jordan Anderson, it's Jalen Davies, and Bruin fans, get ready. Buckle your seatbelts. Alex Johnson is in that group. So I want to go through each of these guys, and I'll pass it over to you. Jordan Anderson, first and foremost, I think there's a lot of optimism there. We were not able to see him in spring ball. He was not on campus in March and April. But this guy, 4 years starting, 34 games to his credit, was the number 1 safety in the transfer portal, according to On3. This guy is experienced. He knows how to play. Lots of tackles for a loss. Over, close to 200 tackles in his career. This guy has played time and time again and clearly impressed Chip Kelly enough in the Bowling Green game against UCLA to reach out and, try to get him back to Westwood. So I'm very confident in Jordan Anderson. Number 2, Davies. Davies, he came in with a lot of hype. He was on paper, arguably our most talented transfer of last season. So coming into last season, he was the most talented on paper transfer. Latu shocked the world by, beating those medicals and doing what he did. But I want to give Davies a lot of credit. That was his first year starting last year, 3 interceptions. He was the only defensive back to have any interceptions, period. 11 total team interceptions. It came from the majority of the linebacking room with guys like John Vons, Muwasau, Kane Madrano, different players like that. So he's the only guy to do that. And I know he had the pick 6 on the Nick Patty throw where it looked like Nathan Peterman just reincarnated. Walking into the one of the worst throws we've ever seen. I think we were in a text thread at this time where we were just like, that is horrendous. I'm glad we got a pick 6 out of that. Hey, you got to make the play when it comes your way. And to his credit, Jalen Davies did that for a 52-yard touchdown in the Sun Bowl. But just that level of ball skills, his first year getting serious time, traditionally speaking, a player gets better with more experience. I think he can be very, very good this year. I think he can be first team all Pac-12 if that ceiling is reached for a guy, Jalen Davies. I came away very, very impressed. 2 of his, 3 picks came in the last 5 games of the season. So he clearly got better going into the last few games. And then just the last guy, Alex Johnson, man. I said this the last time we talked about our spring. There's something to be said about punctual people, man. Being in the right place at the right time. Showing up to your job interview 15 minutes early. Getting there early on your first date, making sure the menus are laid out, doing everything right. Alex Johnson is the complete opposite of a guy like Jalen Davies. And I might feel more confident about Alex Johnson going in to 2023 because one guy was a walk-on, another guy was a top 100 recruit in the entire country. And Johnson playing that nickel corner, he was just all over the field. Even last year, he was tested in limited action, 3 pass deflections. He was very solid when people actually targeted his way. In spring ball, he was the most consistent corner of the bunch. Loved what I saw from him. He's in his 6th year. He was the rare guy. I think he's the last dude that was a part of this Jim Mora regime, that's still on campus for UCLA. So it's very intriguing to see what's going on with our guy, Alex Johnson. And I believe that this is the year we're really going to kind of let him off and see what he's able to do. Talk to me about these top 3, Madman, because these are the guys that I believe are the leaders of the secondary rolling into the season.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I think there's a couple of areas here. One is maybe we start in reverse order of yours, just to sort of mix it up a little bit. Alex Johnson, Will, you and I are both huge fans of his game in terms of what we saw in spring practice. There is a world very credibly where Alex Johnson is the best player of the UCLA secondary this year, that he is the anchor of that secondary. I can see it as clear as day, that scenario playing out. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is he has deceptively great closing speed.
Yes.
And, there's just, you just don't realize it, but he just eats up space with every step. He's very fast. He's very quick. And, that closing speed element are just things that you can't teach. Second, he's got really great instincts, Will. And, he sort of anticipates where guys are going. I'm sort of reminded of the matchups with J. Michael Sturdivant in some of the spring practices. Alex Johnson was the only guy, literally the only guy that gave J. Michael Sturdivant at least some trouble over the course of spring. Everybody else was just getting mowed off the field by Sturdivant. But Alex Johnson, he was always on balance. He always sort of was in the right position. He was closing. Hey, if he got beat because Sturdivant is just that good or the throw was that good. But he was always in position to make the right play. And then third, I love his physicality with his hands. He's just so good with his hands, and he's making guys uncomfortable from a receiver perspective. Guys can't really get to their spot as easy. They can't really sort of turn and extend the way they want to. They don't have clear line of sight back on the ball and the quarterback the way they would like. He just has all of it. And, you and I have spoken to his dad. He's a great friend of the Football Network and of the pod. And it just feels like, even talking to his dad, who's a terrific man and individual, that this is the year it feels like it's all coming together, where all of his talent, coupled with his preparation, coupled with the discipline, coupled with the urgency of knowing that this is his last year in the program and this is his last opportunity to really showcase his abilities to be playing on Sundays and at that next level. I think that perfect kind of convergence of things is going to make Alex Johnson very special this year. I think in terms of Davies, Will, that's a guy that, you and I have sort of had our eye on now for the better part of a year. I couldn't agree with you more about the ball skills. He's got that great anticipation with the ball skills. He was really good in that Alabama State game, where he came on with that pick six and really got the Rose Bowl crowd going. Had a pick against Colorado, had a pick, obviously, in the Pitt game that, frankly, you and I could have made that pick, but, still very much so. I love the ball skills. And frankly, the difference this year in the Pac-12 is going to come down to a few stops and a few turnovers and a few turning sevens into threes. No one is going to be the 85 Bears out there in the Pac-12. No one's going to be the 2000 Ravens out there. This is going to come down to a couple of stops here and there. And the way you can get that is with corners with great ball skills. And I think Davies is going to play a really big role because of that, because of his range and his ability to sort of understand where ball placement is going to take place and really his anticipation in that regard. And then in terms of Jordan Anderson, Will, this is sort of your bread and butter everyday corner. He was so impressive. And, being with Bowling Green, a smaller program, and really being the anchor of that defense. I mean, 200 tackles, Will, is a staggering number for a guy in the secondary. He's getting into Blaylock territory and Osling territory last year, when Blaylock had the 17 tackles against Oregon. And so you can just see how involved he was in terms of usage rate with Bowling Green. And look, let's go back to that Bowling Green game, Will. The UCLA pass offense was not exactly in a position where they were sort of peppering the ball all over the field. Anderson was doing an incredible job on the likes of Kaz Allen, on the likes of Cam Brown, on the likes of TMA. It was hard for that pass offense to get going, and Anderson had a lot to do with it. And Chip Kelly went to Anderson after that opening day game and spent a little bit of extra time with him about just how much he appreciated his play on the field. So I'm very excited about Anderson's just competitiveness and just his moxie and his experience on an every down, every play basis. And I think if all three of those guys can kind of reach their ceiling, this could be really a special year for the secondary, where we can kind of get back to top 50, top 60 kind of defense and really sort of center there and give our offense a chance to be in and potentially win every game.
Absolutely. Could not have said it better myself. Just a lot to like with those three guys on paper heading into 2023, Mad. Here's the I Smell Potential group. And two guys I think everyone knows who we're going to be talking about. this one guy that we will lead off with, he has the highest ceiling of any corner at UCLA, maybe even since the likes of a Darnay Holmes, was on campus for UCLA. The other guy, not as, gifted size-wise, but I think his strength is he's very smart and intellectual on the field. And I think this guy's going to be a starter, whether it's this year or next year, multi-year starter for UCLA moving forward. Those two guys are Devin Kirkwood and Kamari Ramsey. And Kirkwood, man, when he made the game-sealing interception against Washington, at Washington, 2021, we kind of put the declaration out like a star is being born with this guy. Had a little bit of a sophomore slump. He was targeted a lot of scenarios, a lot of one-on-one scenarios. And, to his credit, man, the cornerback position for, my opinion, is the hardest position to play in football, period, given the penalties, given, the leniency that the officials now give to the offense in those certain situations. It's a very tough situation, but a lot of times he was beaten. A lot of times he got penalized. If he can clean those up with that, this guy is an NFL draft scout's dream, for that size and speed combination, if he's able to put it all together. So still, Devin Kirkwood, this is the year, man. I'm excited about what's going to be coming from him. Other guy, Kamari Ramsey, redshirted last year, but was the crown jewel of the 2022 recruiting class, as we've touched upon. Very smart kid. Smart to the point where Stanford was the school he was going to, and then he flipped to UCLA. And you could just kind of see that in the spring practice. It was kind of the first time we got to see him up close. And, he's calling guys out in different spots. He's making reads on, different passes. He broke up a couple plays. Even if it's not this year, the potential's there for Kamari Ramsey to be a multi-year starter at UCLA and really making a difference in that secondary moving forward. These are the potential guys. What do you think about these two guys, Madman? Because I think if these guys click, we are going to have a top 70 or 60 defensive back unit in college football next year.
Yeah, Will, I think you said it really well there. Starting with Devin Kirkwood, you mentioned just the tools in the toolbox, Will. When you talk about the 6'3", when you talk about, let's call it 4.5, ish speed there, that combination is just so rare and unique at the secondary position. The bigger corners are so desired in the NFL and just schematically. And I think Kirkwood just sort of has all of the tools that the other guys don't have. He's just on paper far and away the best guy in the secondary, from a theoretical standpoint. We talked to him a lot last year. He was on the show. Such a great kid. And he sort of so many great interests that he has. He loves cartoons. He loves art. He's just, just so engaging, so charismatic. His mom is such a wonderful person, great family. I think that last year, Will, you and I kind of saw it in that 21 season with the game seal against Washington. Okay, the next star has arrived. And I think he went into last season with that mindset of, okay, I got to really show that I'm the star. This is going to be my secondary room. I'm going to take it to the next step in terms of leading this team. And I'm reminded a little bit of what the great Duke basketball coach Mike Krzyzewski used to say, and this was kind of back in the 92 season when Duke won the national championship in 91. And everyone came back and said, you guys are defending champions. You got to defend the title. And he said, we're not defending anything. 91 was 91. We are going after a championship this year. We are attacking a championship this year. And I think with Kirkwood last year, he almost was, a little bit in his own head, given the off-season expectations around him, around sort of his ability to kind of galvanize the secondary, both by media folks like you and me, both in terms of kind of expectations of coaches. And you got to remember, he was just a sophomore. And so I think because he didn't get off to a great start to the season, he got picked on a little bit in some of the games against Bowling Green, even against Colorado, he got picked on a little bit. And I think that kind of put him in a little bit of a funk of saying, oh man, I'm disappointing so many people because they're expecting so many things. I think this year he's going to come back looser. I don't think that same level of pressure is there. I think he's 1 year older. He's been in the system. I think he's used to the coaches. I think he's also getting used to his body. Everyone kind of develops at a different age. For some, they're sort of peaking in terms of their awareness of their body in high school, others freshman year, others sophomore year, others junior year, and so forth. I think this is the year where it all kind of comes together from a comfort standpoint. And I think if it does, Kirkwood can really sort of change the trajectory of where this secondary can be in a way that no one else can, because just his skills on paper are just so great. And then I think, Will, in terms of Kamari Ramsey, I think you're looking at potentially the future quarterback of the secondary. And, who I'm sort of reminded of is, could he potentially take the torch from Blaylock? And, I'm sort of reminded of the conversation I had with Martin Jarman over the course of the UCLA-Utah game last year. And if you recall in that game, Will, Blaylock, sort of got hit, first, second play of the game and had to leave the game. It was actually a targeting call, and he unfortunately had to sort of leave the game. And Jarman was so worried because he said, he was the captain of the secondary. He was the one who was putting guys in the right positions. He was the one who was calling out the variations on defense. He was the one who could read the eyes of the quarterback and know what was coming. And I think that's a tremendous responsibility, and one that is not something that everybody can do in the secondary. Ramsey, given just his collection of intellect, his poise, and how he's been able to do that at different levels before, he is capable of being that guy. And whether it happens completely this year, I think it's definitely going to happen next year regardless. But he, to me, is going to be that next quarterback of the secondary and really anchor things moving forward. So I love those two picks in where they are from a category standpoint.
And I wouldn't be shocked. I know we talk a lot about the camp battles that will be coming up on the offensive side, whether it's the quarterback battle, who's going to be RB1. Kenny Churchwell going against Kamari Ramsey for that, other safety spot. I think Anderson is going to come in with seniority. Given the action he's seen, he's going to take the spot. But Churchwell going against Ramsey, I think that's going to be a good one. And I do want to encourage people.
And I'll just add this, Thriller, is that sort of competition really brings out the best in you when you're competing for the same spot. And also in the case of Kirkwood, Will, if you recall, the battles he had with Sturdivant. And, it sort of got chippy from time to time in spring ball. But those battles bring the best out in you when it's sort of 1v1 in these types of scenarios. And I think there was sort of an edge to Kirkwood this year that we didn't really see last year. And so I think, again, it kind of speaks to that comfort of him potentially taking that next step.
Pressure makes diamonds, as we like to say. And, we've got one last group. I do also want to shout out some of the younger guys we've been able to recruit to come in here. RJ Jones and Ty Lee are as talented as it gets coming from the Southern California area. So these two guys will be in the secondary. We weren't able to see them. I don't feel right commenting on them just yet. But in terms of recruits coming through, these two guys have it. And we're excited to see them moving forward for UCLA. Last group, the wild cards of the bunch. Two guys that I know you're familiar with that we got to see. And the guy that I really like, John Humphrey. And the reason I like Humphrey is he's the closest guy that is built to a, Devin Kirkwood. He's 6'2" out there playing on the cornerback side. And what I like about this guy is when you get a big body receiver, maybe a Dorian Singer, maybe a Devon Valley from Utah, Kirkwood's going to have to rotate out at times. He's not going to be able to be on the field for every single snap. Humphrey's going to need to come in there and, play up to his speed as a big body corner for these 6'3", 6'5" type of wide receivers out there on the outside. Humphrey showed some flashes in spring ball, which has me excited. This is a guy that's been around the program for quite some time. He's a senior. He's been around. It's time for Humphreys to kind of see what we can do. And the other guy, man, lightning fast speed. I think he might be, if we did a 40-yard dash of the secondary players, I got William Nimmo probably coming in. I would put a $100 bet on that. Nimmo is so dangerous with his speed. And if we have to play a guy like, a Mario Williams of USC and like classic, remember the Titans situation, we got Ryan Gosling on the outside. Can't guard him. We got to put Petey Jones, out there to slow this guy down. He's too fast, coach. I can't get to him. Got to put Nimmo in, man. Nimmo's that guy. Nimmo can slow or at least stay in a foot race with some of the fastest guys within this conference and on the schedule. So those are the two guys that are wild cards. Like if an injury went down or something were to happen where UCLA had to put in some of these guys, similar to a Blaylock situation from last year, these are the guys that I'm counting on to step up off the bench. What do you think about those two picks, Madman?
Well, I really like how you framed it in terms of situational. I think of these guys as, and you and I are big NBA guys, right? And I think of these guys often with when you have a playoff run and you go round over round and it's a different matchup every round. And there may be a guy that doesn't play one round because his game doesn't work with that matchup. And then you bring him in that next round and ends up having really a big impact. And then maybe, the round after that, it's somewhere in between or what have you. Humphries and Nimmo feel to me like those role players in those key situations where depending on the matchup, they can make a really big impact. And with Humphries, you said it really well about that size. And so if you zoom out and you say, well, who on UCLA's schedule, will Humphries potentially make an even bigger impact against, even outside of just being kind of a rotational piece and given some of those guys in those above categories a blow from a play-by-play basis? You said it best, Will. You think about Washington and those big receivers and sort of, that sort of trio, the quartet of possession guys that they have. A guy like Humphries comes in to really make kind of some really nice spot plays over the course of that game. That can be the difference between a win and a loss. When you think about the bigger bodied sort of Utah possession receivers, again, that's where Humphries can shine. If an SC sort of goes big in terms of their package, can a Humphries come in and defend? Even in Oregon State, when they want to sort of go play action but still be a little conservative, Humphries could play a really big role, sort of between that 7 and 15 yards with those bigger receivers. So that's where I see him potentially being really valuable. And then Nimmo, like you said, Will, with just a blazing speed. And I think there's kind of two opportunities for him here. One is, like you said, the Mario Williams gadget-ish receivers in the Pac-12. And obviously, so Mario Williams would be a great matchup there in that SC game. But also those smaller, quicker receivers that Washington State has. Those smaller, quicker receivers that an Arizona has. Even those smaller, quicker receivers that the likes of a San Diego State have. In week 2, you can see Nimmo make a big impact. And the other thing, Will, is could Nimmo, with his blazing speed, find a way to make an impact in the return game? Both kickoff as well as punt. I think, Marshall is there. There's some other things that we're really sort of exploring. I don't think the Bruins really want Sturdivant back there from a usage rate standpoint. I'm not sure if a TMA or a Cam Brown, are really sort of that breakneck speed to sort of be back there. That could also be a tremendous opportunity for Nimmo. So I see the light at the end of the tunnel here where these guys, given the right opponent, given the right situation, can come in here and make a really big impact. And that could, again, be the difference between being in the game in the fourth quarter and not. So really excited to see the impact that these guys can have this year.
In those situational changes that is going to be on the shoulders of new defensive coordinator D'Anton Lynn, that's what separates the good from the great teams. Those simple plays can really, if you got a guy covering just a guy blanketing him, the quarterback looks the other way, throws an interception. That's a game-changing play.
Yes.
And it all happened because, one guy was covering his number one option on a pass play. So, D'Anton Lynn holds the key to this, man. This is the time. I mean, we want to win the Pac-12 in our last year there. There's no secret to that. And the key comes down to the secondary group. I'm just going to say it. We're going to have to get lucky against, some big-name teams, some your USCs, your Utahs, your Oregon States, whatever it may be. But the talent is in place for everything to go UCLA's way if they hit that pinnacle, Madman. Any parting thoughts on this episode of the Bruin Bible breaking down the secondary, my man?
Well, Thriller, first of all, always so fun to sort of break it down with you, as always. And I think you said it really well. I think this secondary sort of holds the keys to the destiny in a lot of ways. And when you think about this secondary, I sort of think of a Harry Potter movie. They got the Patronus charms. They got, the invisible sort of, spells. I mean, they can kind of change the complexion of this season with their play. And the swing, the variance, you know what you're going to get from the run game. You know what you're getting from these receivers. You know what you're getting from this front seven. You know that the offensive line is going to develop over the course of the year. You truly yet don't completely know what you're getting from the secondary. And I think you said it really well, Will. It really is going to come down to 3 road games, that is going to be that barometer. At USC, at Utah, at Oregon State. When you look at this UCLA schedule, those are the 3 games that you circle and say, that's where we need all hands on deck. I think that UCLA is going to be favored from a Vegas odds standpoint in all other games in this season, except for those 3. And that's where this secondary is really going to have to sort of earn their keep, if you will. Going to be really exciting. But I think in years past, Will, what's different is the fact that we were even able to make this tier of category. I think last year, the year before, we sort of thought of the secondary as this collective, a bunch of guys that can be really talented, but is there really a hierarchy? We always knew Blaylock was kind of the captain, but then after that, there really wasn't kind of a hierarchy, a pecking order, and really complementary skills. What I'm excited about this year is there's complementary skills, ball skills with Davies, size with Kirkwood, more of a every down physical corner with Anderson. Then you talk about the cerebral nature of Ramsey. And even in terms of the role players, size of Humphreys, speed of Nimmo. They're much more complementary pieces to each other this year than they have been in years past. And I think that's what we should really be hanging our hats on.
Let's hang our hats on this. I think the Bruins are going to get it done when it matters most this year. Bruin Bible, make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel, the podcast itself, everything LAFB that we got coming on. Another podcast coming this week. Not sure the topic just yet. Maybe we try to recruit some of our famous friends to come on. Who knows? We could have another big one coming your guys' way very, very soon. But Bruin Bible, we are officially out. You guys have a great rest of your evening and look forward to